Welcome to the Wealth Dialogue. I'm Emily.
And I'm Jack.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Inflation. It's probably the most used and I think least understood economic word of the last few years.
Oh, for sure. We hear it all the time.
We hear it constantly, right? It's treated like this giant abstract number on a chart somewhere, and it's usually debated by analysts who, let's be honest, probably haven't stepped inside a grocery store in months.
Exactly. And our mission today is really to move entirely beyond that textbook definition. We're doing a deep dive into the actual the human cost of inflation.
The real-life impact.
Yeah, using sources like the hidden cost of living, which details how these sustained price increases didn't just affect the economy, they really redefined everyday American life.
And that's the real story, isn't it? The one that hit millions of people. It was felt in the most personal way possible, at the register, at the gas pump, in your rent payment.
Mm.
The fundamental problem wasn't some complex economic theory. It was actually simple. Suddenly, the same paycheck that you used to cover everything with, it just didn't stretch as far anymore.
And getting your head around that is, I think, really the key here. The impact was insidious. It was structural. It wasn't some single sharp correction.
Right.
It was this prolonged, unrelenting pressure that just slowly chipped away at your financial stability. So we're going to break down what inflation actually did to budgets, to savings, to debt, and maybe most importantly, to your peace of mind.
That sets up our first big insight perfectly. When most people think about inflation, they picture this sudden price spike. It happens once, maybe during one really bad month, and then things kind of stabilize.
Yeah, that's the common idea.
But that's a huge misunderstanding, and a dangerous one.
It really is. What's so fascinating when we look at the data is that inflation wasn't a single event at all. It was the pressure of persistence. That's the key.
The pressure of persistence. I like that phrase.
It's so important to realize that prices didn't just rise dramatically. They rose, and then they stayed high. And that means those cost increases just became a permanent fixture in your budget.
And that constant pressure it's financially exhausting, sure, but it's also mentally exhausting. Why is that sustained nature the thing that truly drained people?
Well, it creates this decision fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
And it just eliminates any hope for relief. If prices spike once and then go back to normal,
right,
okay, you can adjust for a month. You can handle that.
You tighten your belt for a bit.
Right. But when prices rise and then just hold at that new level, every single trip to the grocery store, every bill you pay, it requires a new decision, a new calculation, and often a new sacrifice.
You're constantly having to triage your own budget.
You are. And that unrelenting mental load month after month after month is what causes people to feel just economically fatigued. It's the marathon nobody signed up for.
And this pressure, it hit exactly where there was nowhere to turn. If the price of a luxury car goes up, you just don't buy it. Simple.
Mm-hmm.
But we saw the most shocking, the most sustained increases in non-optional essentials.
Precisely. The data from the sources are crystal clear on this. The immediate pain points were food, gasoline, rent, and utilities.
All the things you absolutely cannot avoid.
Exactly. You look at the fundamental needs of a household.
Right.
Where you live, how you get to work, how you feed your family. These are non-negotiable costs. So when the basics rise, there's no discretionary spending left to cut. You're forced to choose between essentials, which magnifies both the financial and the emotional stress exponentially.
Huh. While people were battling that higher cost of groceries and gas today, something else was quietly, almost silently, eating away at their ability to handle tomorrow.
The erosion of their savings.
Exactly. The erosion of savings. This is that silent killer of purchasing power that people often don't spot until it's way too late.
It's such a critical point. Inflation doesn't, send you an email to warn you. It just means that the purchasing power of every single dollar you hold is slowly, consistently melting away.
Like an ice cube in the sun.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
Think of your savings like a fixed-size ice cube. The number of dollars in your bank account might look the same, but what those dollars can buy is rapidly diminishing.
Can you give us a really practical example of that erosion? How does that actually impact someone planning for the future?
Sure. Let's say you had $10,000 saved for a future down payment, and inflation runs at, say, 6% for a year. Those dollars in the bank haven't changed, but the house you plan to buy, it's effectively become 6% more expensive.
So you need more money just to have the same power you had last year.
You need $10,600 now to have the same purchasing power. So money that's just sitting passively in a savings account, especially one with a really low interest rate, is guaranteed to buy less, month after month. And you often don't realize the extent of that loss until you actually go to make that big purchase.
And it wasn't just savings getting hit. Debt became heavier, too. This was the 1-2 punch that made managing finances feel like trying to run uphill on sand.
Absolutely, you were getting attacked from both sides. The problem wasn't just the overall cost of living. Debt management became dramatically harder because interest rates, particularly on your variable debt, they rose alongside inflation.
And that was driven by the central bank trying to cool the economy down.
Right, and that dual action is what made debt so much more destructive.
So break that down for us. Why was that so bad?
Okay, let's look at credit cards. If inflation is high, your $500 grocery bill is now $550. If you put that on a credit card, you now have a larger printable balance.
Okay, that makes sense.
But at the same time, the interest rate on that card, which might have been, say, 16%, suddenly jumps to 21%.
Yeah.
So you're compounding a higher principal at a dramatically higher rate.
Wow.
People found themselves paying hundreds more in interest every year just to stay in the same place financially. They were using more and more of their income just to service the debt, which drastically reduced their ability to pay down the balance, let alone save anything. It was an impossible treadmill for so many people.
And this is where it gets really interesting. And honestly, it's the saddest part of the source material we looked at. This whole economic crunch had a profound emotional and psychological cost that went way beyond the balance sheet.
Mm-hmm.
When money gets tighter like that, the immediate human reaction is often this intense self-blame.
It's the most common response, and it's just heart-wrenching to read about. People looked at their budget, and this is the crucial part, a budget they hadn't changed, and they saw it failing.
Their income hadn't gone down.
No, but their ability to survive had. So they internalized that struggle. They thought, I must be bad with money. They felt this shame, thinking they must have made poor choices or that they weren't working hard enough.
So what does this all mean? The crucial counterpoint, and this is really the aha moment for you listening, is that for most people, the financial struggle came from forces entirely outside their control.
That's it.
It wasn't about poor budgeting skills. It was about the entire financial landscape shifting violently right under their feet.
And that realization is so necessary for reclaiming any sense of control and confidence. The source material had this really compelling mini-story about a specific family in Ohio that just captured this perfectly. They described feeling financially broken overnight.
Tell us more about that family. What was the catalyst for them?
Well, their income was steady. They lived a pretty moderate lifestyle, budgeted meticulously. But over the course of about 18 months, they noticed they stopped being able to afford their kids' usual weekend activities. You know, a trip to the local zoo or an ice cream outing without dipping into their small savings buffer.
And I imagine that created some tension.
Oh, yeah. They started fighting about who was spending too much on what. The wife felt guilty about groceries. The husband felt guilty about gas.
It sounds like they were blaming each other or themselves for a problem that was actually systemic.
Exactly. They felt this profound sense of failure. They just assumed they must have been sloppy with their tracking or lacked discipline. But then they sat down and benchmarked their current budget against their 2019 budget line by line.
And what did they find?
They saw something crucial. Their spending habits were almost identical. But their non-optional expenses, so rent, food, insurance, had ballooned by over 15%.
Yeah.
They realized their paycheck was simply smaller in real terms.
They weren't bad with money.
No, the dollar itself had failed them.
And that moment of clarity, just that realization that the source of the pressure was external and structural, that's what allowed them to stop the self-blame.
It was essential. Once they stopped focusing all that energy on internal guilt and started focusing on external adaptation, they gained a sense of agency. They realized they weren't failing. The economic environment had just become exponentially harder to navigate. And understanding that distinction is the very first step toward making effective change.
Understanding the problem is half the battle, but, the other half is adaptation. Since we know this kind of persistent pressure exists and it could very well return, we need to shift our focus to the practical, the calm, the smart adjustments that the sources suggest for protection now. And these aren't just panic moves. These are strategic, long-term adjustments for anyone looking to gain some control back.
When the rules of the game change, you have to update your playbook. And the sources provided 6 highly realistic, really actionable moves that anyone can implement to adapt. This is basically the blueprint for resilience.
Okay, let's walk through them in detail. Let's start with the first one, which sounds fundamental, but I think it's often overlooked. Focus spending on needs, not habits.
This is all about getting out of financial autopilot. A habit purchase might be something you do every day, like that expensive daily coffee or a subscription you barely use, but it feels necessary because it's just part of your routine.
Right.
The sources suggest you have to rigorously separate those discretionary spending habits from your absolute needs: food, housing, necessary utilities. When budgets are strained, every single dollar has to go toward a need first. And this requires some harsh honesty about what's truly essential versus what's just, comfortable.
Okay. Number two is one of the most intellectually fascinating pieces of advice, I think. Track price increases, not just totals. Why is that distinction so important for awareness?
Because tracking just the total bill masks the pain of inflation. If you used to pay $200 for your weekly groceries and now you pay $215, tracking the total just feels like a slightly bigger bill.
That's how the money went.
It doesn't. But tracking the specific price increase on staples, that gallon of milk or that loaf of bread that went from $4 to $5,
Yeah.
that makes the inflation concrete. It makes it real. It forces you to be aware of where your purchasing power is being lost, and that allows you to substitute or delay or shop around for those specific high inflation items. It turns an abstract number into actionable info.
Okay, the third move directly addresses that vicious debt problem we talked about. Reduce high-interest debt first. This is classic financial advice, but it becomes, hypercritical during these times.
Oh, absolutely crucial, because the interest rates on credit cards and variable loans, they rose in lockstep with, and sometimes even faster than, inflation. If you're paying 20% or more, that debt is compounding at an accelerated rate. It's often canceling out any financial gains you might make anywhere else.
So it's the biggest fire you have to put out.
It is the single most efficient way to free up cash flow almost instantly. Because every dollar you pay off at 22% is a dollar you saved at a guaranteed 22% rate of return.
Number four is about maintaining financial maneuverability. Keep cash flexible, not locked away. What kind of flexibility are we talking about here?
We're talking about access and speed in an unpredictable environment. When the cost of living is volatile, you need liquidity to handle emergencies, like a car repair, a sudden spike in a utility bill, without having to resort to putting it on that expensive high-interest debt.
So no locking money up in long-term things.
Exactly. Flexibility means avoiding long-term CDs or investments that lock up your capital for years, especially if you think you might need that money to cover rapidly rising essential costs. The sources really emphasize maintaining a robust, easily accessible emergency fund. Flexibility offers speed and control when you're under pressure.
The next move, number five, is one that I think a lot of people overlook just because of, financial inertia. Negotiate fixed bills yearly. This seems simple, but it's a direct countermeasure to that pressure of persistence.
It is, and providers rely so heavily on customer inertia. Your fixed bills like internet, phone, cable, a lot of insurance policies, they're often negotiable. Or you can find better deals just by switching providers.
It just takes a phone call.
It takes a phone call. Set a yearly calendar reminder to spend 30 minutes calling these companies, renegotiating, or seeking new quotes. It's a simple, high-return action. It's one of the few areas where you have direct control. If you save $20 a month on your internet bill, hey, that's $240 back in your budget to fight rising food costs.
And finally, the sixth move. This one speaks most directly to long-term resilience and your future self. Build skills that increase income over time.
This is probably the most powerful and strategic adaptation in the entire source material. While the first 5 moves are all about defense, conservation, cutting losses.
Yeah.
Number 6 is purely about offense.
Hmm.
If inflation is this constant, steady external force pushing prices higher, a force you can't stop, the only way to truly defeat it over the long haul is to increase your value in the marketplace.
It's about making your earning power outrun the inflation rate.
Exactly. Whether it's through new certifications, specialized knowledge, or mastering new areas of your current job that qualify you for a promotion or a higher-paying role elsewhere, increasing your income stream is the ultimate long-term armor against sustained inflation.
Yeah.
You can't cut expenses indefinitely. You have to increase revenue eventually. The source material views this not as a nice-to-have, but as a necessary shift in focus.
Which brings us right back to where we started this deep dive. Inflation fundamentally changed the rules of personal finance. It made the game dramatically harder and created these genuine psychological burdens.
But understanding how it worked, that it was this persistent structural pressure, that it hit your non-optional essentials first, and that it created that destructive 1-2 punch on savings and debt, that is the key. That's how you move from confusion and self-blame to calculated action. The feeling of being squeezed wasn't a personal failure. It was an economic phenomenon.
So what does this all mean for you right now? We've covered the psychological shift that's needed, and we've reviewed those 6 practical moves that form your adaptation blueprint.
And if we can leave you with one final thought that builds on everything we've discussed, it's this. The true, enduring defense against inflation isn't just about mastering the art of cutting back, although that's essential for short-term survival. The ultimate defense is mastering your ability to increase your income over time.
So the question for you to mull over is this. If inflation is a constant external pressure that devalues every dollar you earn, what skills are you prioritizing today to secure tomorrow's financial resilience? That's the question to take with you as you step away from this deep dive